Okay, let's get moving for our third presentation. The title of this presentation is Going Steady. How long will my cross-media campaign last? And so I think you're going to find in this presentation some pretty interesting attention to detail on frequency and all the kinds of things you look at across different platforms. And what I'd like to do, the two people presenting today are Tania Yuki from Comscore and Brian Pugh as well. So Tania, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Hello, everyone. Great to see everybody. Great to be back live for an ARF. I was trying to remember the last time I've been in person at an ARF. This is very, very exciting. So I'm Tania Yuki. I'm the CMO and EVP at Comscore. And here to talk a little bit about some research that we recently embarked upon to start to understand how to think about cross-media. Not only in terms of reach, but we'll be going into that too, but also in terms of how to optimize across platforms for very specific outcomes. But it wouldn't be a Comscore presentation if we didn't kick you off with a bunch of data and a bunch of trends. So let's dive in. Whoa. Okay. Okay, all right. Everyone woken up, all right. So we're going to jump into some trends. A little bit about the time that we're in. Exciting time to be alive, very, very bloody hard time to be in measurement. Every single time a consumer finds some new innovation and adopts some new behavior, as measurement, we need to jump and try and figure it out. And that couldn't be more true now. Just to look at it from a sheer devices standpoint, the average number of devices, connected devices per household went from 9 pre-pandemic to 12 in January of this year. Now, not all of these are ad supported, so we don't need to think about all of the interfaces quite yet. But if you think about what human experience looks like and the amount of touch points and ways that we can reach and measure things, it really is a brave new world and a complex one for everyone in the room here who are thinking about the right way to reach and move consumers. Everything's kind of smashed together, right? So we talk about linear television, we talk about online video, we talk about social as if they somehow happened within worlds of their own. But we all know we're doing multiple things. I know no one in this room is looking at their email because they wouldn't, because they're right here with me. But in other rooms, that happens too, right? This is just an example of one network TV series. And we trended linear TV's average audience, digital reach, and social media engagement. And it's very hard, and we're going to talk about cross-platform deduplication, and that's all cool. But even without that, it's very hard to imagine that these are not somehow inextricably commingled together. And then just to flip it again, right? This is social media trends across Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Overall, we grew 28%, but television, like linear TV programming, grew more than 3 times that on social media at the same time. So just everything is about context switching and about the right content to the right consumer, which again, complicates things as we think about how to reach consumers meaningfully across platforms. Okay, so now just to zoom out, and this has been, something incredible returning back to Comscore, is just the breadth of all the different touch points that we have access to. But this is what, if we measured from January of last year through to January of this year, what has media consumption looked like in that time period? Yes, linear television is still the juggernaut in the room at 205 billion hours. That is live plus 15-day, right, Brian? Okay. Sanity checking. However, if you stitch together connected TV and online video, now you're starting to look at video much more holistically. Even hours spent in movie theaters, hours spent on social media, irrespective of what's happening with short form video. This is sort of what this media ecosystem looks like. And you might ask the question, I'm just going to pop through this guy. You might ask the question, well, is that up or down? And the interesting thing is it's, yes, there are some puts and takes. There were some declines in linear viewing, but video overall across linear CTV and online video was up 5%. So cumulative video Yes, that is all of you. And I know this doesn't apply to anyone here. You have not watched more content in the last year, but the average person has. And CTV's outpaced that at almost 3x. So we are somehow finding ways to continue to consume content. And then as marketers, we need to think about how to intersect that experience and show up in a relevant and a resonant way. That's long form video. There's also some real cool things happening in short form video. We just pulled some stats for Reels, for TikTok videos, for YouTube Shorts, which is just a fast growing, really fascinating format, growing in double-digit percentages and redefining video consumption across not just mobile devices, but even across connected TV screens as well. And if you think you can just sort of go, okay, great, now Reels is this thing and we can sort of relax. I mean, this is just looking at the composition of engagement across Instagram 2020, 2021, and 2022, comparing carousel units to Reels, right? And you can see carousel's incredibly dominant in 2020. It starts to, wane a little 2021, and then Reels takes over. So this is a space that is just moving so fast, where, if we think we can just be setting media plans and just set it and forget it and relax, sadly you can't, right? Because the world just keeps changing. So that is what it is, right? Okay, so within each platform, so this is looking at digital. Interestingly, there's definitely some growth and some things that decline. Like people are actually spending less time on social media than they were in March 2019, but entertainment is growing massively. But it's actually more stable than you might think, right? 2020 was sort of the aberration. But human behavior, what we care about, what we spend time on, it can shift in form, but it stays pretty constant. You can see that here too when you break out social media. This is looking at, if you remember that slide where social was growing, like what were they actually doing, right? So it's consuming content, it's news, it's publishing, it's media and entertainment, it's sports. Sports was actually the fastest growing category across social media during that same time period. And not to bury the lead, it's of course the genre of linear television viewing that also grew the most in the last year, which makes sense, right? Live television being the dominant piece there. I'll just point out one other thing. You see movies declining for linear television because there's so much more choice, right? There's so many more ways to consume movie content. But really, really a lot of interesting movement across how a consumer spends time. It wouldn't be a presentation about trends if we didn't mention these dastardly Gen Zs. So, a couple of things that jumped out to me. We talked a little bit about brand loyalty, right? 38% stick to a brand when they find one they like, which sounds great. The stat that I haven't put up here, which is the important one, only 16% purchase brands that they grew up with, right? So we're really, many of these audience personas are sort of changing the rules in how we think about building brand love, establishing loyalty, building long-term value. Gen Z cares deeply about being healthy and self-conscious. 93% are focused on living a healthy lifestyle, but only 39% attest to caring what others think about them. So it's all about self-actualization. Many things just to bear in mind as you think about the kind of creative and the kind of campaigns that will resonate. Here are some things which jumped out within Gen Z for media consumption. They care about their community with local news. Yes, they watch movies. Yes, but they over-index with documentaries versus other age categories. So, really changing a lot of the rules when we think about how to reach people. And yes, I just talked about a generation, but the last thought in trends that I'll leave you with before we shift to some of our key findings is no audience is any one thing. Yes, it's fantastic to segment, and yes, it's great to understand Gen Z and Gen Y and Gen X and others. But each audience, this is just a snapshot of the Bel Air audience, which just returned back to television, I believe, at the end of February, second season. there's a, it's a reboot of an existing show, but their audience is also, pro home cooks and people who are business travelers and others. So always, looking deeper into what's possible to know in the data and finding some of these secrets is just one of the opportunities when we think about reaching people across all the multiple touch points. So with that, I'll pass to Brian to share a little bit about what we found.
Thank you, Tania. Let's see. All right, great. I'm Brian Pugh. I'm a CIO at Comscore, but I'm also work on our cross-platform innovation. And we wanted to walk through, so we have all those trends, cross screen, or people are consuming media across different screens. We're measuring campaigns cross-platform, and we've looked at 400 campaigns over the last 6 months or so, and to understand what some of the trends are. And as far as the platform mixes, how reach interacts with those platform mixes, and then we look at some effectiveness information. But as far as reach goes, total internet still growing. People are still coming online. Social media still growing about 11% or so. There are fewer linear television households. They're consuming media elsewhere. And then connected TV, exploding by 32%. Linear TV is still the king as far as total viewership for any one channel, but it's clear that that you can reach some people on some platforms more effectively than others. So one of the things we wanted to look at is just how incremental reach works over time. And what we've broken out here is TV versus CTV versus total digital over the length of the campaign. And we're looking at days 8+, because early in the campaign, you start the campaign, you're going to reach infinite incremental people on day 1, and then more people early in the campaign. But what happens after a week or so? TV, you reach a lot of, in the campaigns we studied, you reach a lot of the people early on in the campaign, and we're reaching incremental people on CTV and digital more often. That are engaged, and they're not found on the linear television platform, right? So that's one of the advantages of a cross-screen campaign as far as optimizing reach. If you can reach them on other platforms, you're not going to get them on linear television. You can also add incremental audience over the course of the campaign. We also looked at this by demographic. So, comparing the 18 to 34 population as a proxy for Gen Z, and then 35+, that incremental audience that we see over the course of the campaign, most primarily coming from digital and CTV, we see a larger impact on that 18 to 34. So this platform mix is important to add to incremental reach, to finding more audiences. Or to find your audience if they're not available on just linear alone. That's not to say linear still brings the majority of the reach, but you can find these incremental audiences on these other platforms. One thing that we've seen as far as efficiency goes, pretty much across the board, as you see here, I'll walk through this. So on the x-axis is the percentage of each campaign that's digital or CTV. So you have a 10% of the impressions or the reach come from digital in the total cross-platform campaign. On the y-axis is the incremental lift percentage from these platforms. And then that diagonal line is just the 1-to-1 ratio. And what we see is digital and TV punch above their weight for incremental reach in all the studies, just about all the studies that we measured. So you add a point of reach, you're adding 1.2, 1.3 points of incremental lift versus just linear television. So you're reaching more people incrementally, more efficiently for these audiences. So I wanted to highlight reach. It doesn't bring a lot of context, like how effective is reaching these people on these different platforms. So we looked at our brand survey studies that measured cross-platform effectiveness. And we looked at the mix between different platforms and the lift that we saw across different brand lift variables. So, how often was the brand recognized? How often do they remember the ad? How favorable are they to the brand? The likelihood to purchase, the likelihood to recommend the brand to somebody else. As we add different platform mixes, and this is an average across these things, we see that incremental lift increase. And just goes to show that, the cross-screen effectiveness, there is a positive impact on the brand. Social media was highly significant when we looked at that. We looked at it again without social media, and we're seeing that same lift as you mix TV, digital, CTV, all three. You're getting incremental lift across, favorability and purchase intent. So we wanted to break it down a little more granularly, just to show, we have all these different types of mixes, the single platforms versus, mixing OTT, TV and social on their own. You can see how the multi-platform mix on the previous view was put together. But, there's definitely a significant lift in these metrics by mixing different platforms. And this is the same view for ad recall. The previous one was for aided awareness. And then again, looking at 18 to 34-year-olds as a proxy for Gen Z. For aided awareness, we're seeing, you add a single platform, you get a 6-point lift. But when you add TV and digital, digital OTT, almost 3x the amount of lift, because you're, for the lift for this age group. And then breaking down the other the other brand variables that we looked at, aided awareness and ad recall, favorability, and the likelihood to recommend it. These were just the top platform mixes that we saw in the 400 or so campaigns that we measured. And the signal is there, right? As you mix these platforms together, we're seeing a lift in these effectiveness metrics. And then, well, I will also mention, TV figures prominently in all of these, because these were, all for the type of lift that we saw. These were the most significant mixes, and TV figures prominently. For purchase intent, we're seeing, social figure prominently. And you can see as you add these different platform mixes, they are increasing over time, or over the different studies that we had. So this was a exciting study for us to put together. We have enough cross-platform measurement these days to be able to measure the signal and the lift across different platform mixes and incremental reach. There's a lot to study for. There's a lot of things that we'd like to continue investigating. How impact was the creative in this process. We were really looking at reach and effectiveness on a higher level. It's all about reaching audiences. It's not just about, mixing platforms. Where are the audiences that you want to reach? What's the most effective way to optimize to reach them? And, we really look forward to continue down this path and doing this research. Do you want to add anything, Tania?
No, I don't think so. I think some of the next pieces that we've started working through.
You have a microphone there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. With my dying breath. Hang on, is that better?
Yes.
I mean, I know doesn't sound better, but you can hear me. Okay. Yeah, like some of the cuts that we started to do that we, look forward to collaborating with many of you on are breaking out industry verticals, for example. And then you start slicing and dicing industry verticals by platforms. We looked at, but didn't have time in today's presentation to break into the impact of shorter campaigns versus longer, and just the impact of frequency over time. So there's really a lot to continue to dive in, but we really wanted to get started to pull together everything that we've looked at and then start to produce it back in ways that we hope will be actionable and that we hope, will give cause to consternation and challenge so that we can continue to, reframe and think about how to test many of these questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll kick off with one really quick question. And it might be taking off what you just mentioned, Tania. I mean, this is fantastic data, but when it comes to a particular brand with a particular campaign, how do you work with them to let them know what share should go to each of these components?
Yeah, that's a that's a terrific question. So, this is like, I'd love it if this could be like oh, you want to drive purchase intent and you're a new brand. Great.
Could you hold up here?
Oh, I'm sorry. Like, I wish this, it would be wonderful if this could be a prescriptive, perfect, paid by numbers type formula. But look, it really starts with, understanding the goals and the audience. Like, we really like to be as involved as we can be throughout the planning process, because I think getting the audience right and understanding what your assumptions are when you choose the audience that you want to reach. I mean, that's always the starting point. We're not, I think, deeply in the business of advising on creative. However, we have a crap ton of examples of creative that worked in different scenarios and others, and can, I think, be quite thoughtful around best practices for it. And again, it's never a perfect, like, just do it exactly like this and it will, that was one of the things that drove me crazy in social. Like, how do you make a viral video? Just try and make lots and lots of good videos over and over, and maybe one day one of them will, but yeah, so I think that's really important up front. But then, testing and learning and partnering with companies that, have long-term objectives and are willing to make adjustments based on what they're seeing early. Like, that to me is probably the most important thing about collaborating with our partners. The most, as many of you who are researchers know, the most debilitating thing is to have an insight and to have someone not do anything about it, right? It's like, it's very soul crushing. So I think those are some of the key things, but I don't know what you'd add to that, Brian.
Great. Other questions? Over here.
I would just ask.
If you could, let's give you one of these so people can hear you that are on Zoom.
I would just ask for this study, and this is really informative and really interesting. How are you defining CTV versus digital? Like, what? Because if I'm watching YouTube on my Vizio, is that CTV or is that digital?
Yes. In this case, it's a screen on the wall with a digital pipe, essentially.
So if I'm streaming Hulu on my phone, is that digital or is that
be digital?
That would be digital.
In
Okay.
this case, yes. I mean, it's not a perfect definition. It's very hard to get there.
No, I know.
But we're looking at the form factor here.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions? One here.
I had the same question about definition of television, but we'll leave that for now. I actually wanted to know, have you run any scenarios without TV? Because a lot of advertisers out of budget and also always on strategies are choosing to use any digital platform but linear or any form of TV.
Yes, we have. We wanted to showcase all the platforms here, but we do measure digital and social and what the impacts are. I mean, it's similar platform effect when you mix the platforms together. TV, from a reach perspective, though, it just is very efficient, right? Because you can reach a lot of people very early on. So we tend to see the reach build a little bit slower on.
But the effects that you show generally,
yes,
same.
Yes,
Okay.
I mean
Directionally.
Yeah,
same.
the ones we highlighted were sort of the top, most significant effects. But yeah, we see similar lifts from different platform mixes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and given we sliced it so many ways, if anyone wants to see specific cuts, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be thrilled to bombard you with spreadsheets.
Question, is it safe to assume that as more channels were added, the total budget stayed flat? Or
Yeah,
was more budget more channels equaled more budget.
In general, across the campaigns that we measured, we did not see, we saw what you were saying. Like, we did not see massive shifts in terms of big budget versus small. And I think there were a few exceptions to that we controlled for. But in general, it was the similar pools of money spread here versus here.
Another question, right?
Sorry, can I just ask, are you deduplicating the reach?
Yes, we are.
I know this,
duplicating the
you probably
reach.
won't be able to answer this day.
Uh-huh.
How are you deduplicating reach? Because that's no easy task, is it?
No, it's not. We measure each of the channels. We have a TV measurement, which is we get from MVPD data. We have digital measurement, where we're combining panel with direct integrations from publishers, advertisers, and then we're deduplicating that with basically with our own identity. So we're measuring each of the channels and then we're combining them. And we think that's the best approach for cross-platform right now, because you can get the scale for each of the individual channels. And then, we are, graphing as much as we can together and then modeling what we can't graph together.
So no more double counting, which is good.
Yeah, except for hours right now, right? Like that's a really tough one though, from a measurement perspective, because, like we had some data on sports enthusiasts. And one of the things we saw was, the time that they spend on mobile and on TV, like are pretty in line, right? Because they're engaging with multiple things simultaneously. So that's still a challenge for sure from a measurement perspective.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is our last question. Thanks again.